I'm very, very excited to have Rank the Vote here with us. Nathan Lockwood is going to come up and speak with us, and I know has some questions about the various things we would like him to cover. So thank you for your attendance today. Thank you for being such passionate advocates. For those of you who aren't aware, Massachusetts has right now enacted, and I'm sure you'll share more about this, a town-by-town approach to ranked choice voting on the municipal level, and more efforts being done, of course, at the state level. And very excited to learn from your successes. I overheard earlier you mentioning Connecticut's recent momentum and failure to launch, so I'll certainly be asking some questions about that, but just very appreciative of you being here. So Nathan Lockwood, everybody.
Hey, thank you very much, Joshua. It's been a real pleasure to be here today. I've really enjoyed your conversations, and hats off to you folks. A big round of applause for your decision to join something important and to build something. I think that's real important, and way better than sitting at home by ourselves. So thank you. I also want to introduce my colleague, who's Luz Rappaport, who is a student here at UMass. Luz is a graduate student. We just hired her on a part-time basis. We just hired them on a part-time basis recently. It's Luz is they them, and they have been wonderful. It's great to get new talent, new experience, and they have a lot of it. And I'm already learning from her as well as benefiting from having someone doing the work here in Pioneer Valley. So thanks, Luz, for joining me today on the weekend. All right, so I guess, I wear two hats. I co-founded an organization called Rank the Vote, and I work there 3/4 of my time. Raise your hand if you've heard of this organization, Rank the Vote. All right, good number of folks, great. Yeah, we started out focused on ranked choice voting. We branched out, still work on ranked choice voting, but also proportional representation, which you guys were talking about earlier, and fair maps, and in some places where it's important to people, we work on open primaries. Our big thing we bring to the table is helping folks in states that want to form organizations or run organizations that advocate for these issues, like Emmy was talking about. Help support them, make sure they have the tools and information and networks they need to maximize their success. So in New England, we have a number of state partners in New York and Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and some other organizations, a couple other organizations in Pennsylvania and Vermont that we work with once in a while as well. But it's exciting. I think the big thing I want to hear, as Joshua was saying, rather than just get right into a presentation deck, I want to ask you guys a few questions about what would be most helpful for you to hear and for us to talk about today. I'll just preface this by saying that, I think it's, again, I've really enjoyed getting to be a fly on the wall today and learning about what you're thinking about. It's really inspiring to see the thought that you're putting into the work that you're doing, and the effort you're putting into it, and hopefully the success to come out. And I think one of the reasons a lot of people who are interested in ranked choice voting and proportional representation is because there is real power in people coming together to, co-create a shared platform that they can then sort of advocate and evangelize with others who may also be inspired by that. But the sad thing is that the way we vote right now completely discourages this type of political activity and turns political party from this sort of community building, self-education process that you guys are engaged in into this kind of dirty word that people associate with, back dealing and liars, cheats, and thieves, and big money, and you name it, right? So I really, I love being in a room like this where there's a bunch of folks committed to turning that around, whether it be turning it around by changing that electoral system to one that fosters this type of activity, or by saying, you know what, I don't care about that electoral system, I'm going to engage in this activity anyways, and we're going to make you change it. That's so great to be here. A little bit about the time we live in right now. So there's a lot of different reasons, I think, to be interested in this stuff, but let me just quick, before I go too far, raise your hand if you think you would consider yourself very familiar with ranked choice voting and proportional representation. Raise your hand. Okay. Oh, I'm seeing some, let's say, how about a little bit familiar? Okay. And if you would say you're not familiar at all, raise your hand now.
No shame.
No shame, yeah, exactly. I was not familiar at all 10 years ago, so it's all good. All right. And is my voice okay? I'm talking too loud, too quiet? Okay. All right, so we will probably, I'll go through a little bit of the presentation, and if you get bored of it because you already know it, then you just tell me to, turn it over. And then we're going to have Luz talk to you about the work she's doing as well. She's just on the job, they are just on the job, hitting the ground running, and they are already, starting to form their plan about how they're going to work with folks. This place you chose to meet is a hotbed of both election reform activity and third-party support, I would say, as well. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah.
So it's folks who are familiar with, Pioneer Valley, Amherst would know. All right, so there's other reasons. So we talked about allowing new parties to form, giving people an incentive to spend their time gathering and investing in building the community of a party to talk about things that matter. There's other reasons as well. As folks know, right now in American politics, there is very little competition. If you are someone sort of on the left or the center left, you pretty much have one choice. If you're on the right or the center right, you have one choice. And 85% or more of congressional districts now, there's a 99% chance baked in that one of those choices is going to win. So it's almost like, is this a democracy or a collection of warring one-party fiefdoms? I don't know. But we can see the results in terms of what does and doesn't get done, mostly doesn't get done at the federal level. And the states, they may be somewhat more encouraging compared to federal, as Emmy was kind of alluding to, are far from utopia or any or super productive or anything. So there's that. Just recent news. Let's just cover real quick. The states are. What we've seen recently is a gerrymandering war, a race to the bottom. And the thing about gerrymandering, I guess in retrospect, after these past few months, I guess the thing in my mind is, why didn't this happen sooner? Because all the incentives are to do this, but I guess it's somewhat reassuring that it didn't happen sooner. Like we had to get this polarized for people to pull out all those pins or whatever. There's been gerrymandering for a while, but for the final, taking it all the way, they had to wait until 2026 for whatever reason. But we can see the dynamic, and that's a problem. And then on top of that, you couldn't accelerate this anymore, I don't think. The Voting Rights Act just suffered, pretty lethal blow in terms of this Calais Supreme Court decision, which is going to allow more states to gerrymander and, in particular, eliminate majority-minority districts that were created to ensure some level of representation for example, black populations that weren't even enfranchised before the 60s, and the Voting Rights Act put this in place to ensure that in addition to being enfranchised, they would have some representation as well. So it's kind of all the illusions are shattered now as far as representation goes. It wasn't great 6 months ago for I would say any American, but it's even worse now. And I guess, so that's bad news. I'm not trying to depress you. The good news is, I think you can already see it happening. The conversations around proportional representation, which we can talk about a little bit later, but offers an alternative path to gerrymandering that makes gerrymandering almost ineffective, that ensures instead of a winner-take-all election, that we have elections that produce winners for all, or almost all, so that almost everyone gets represented. I mean, there's obviously groups in America that have been represented worse than others. I would say though, in this day and age, I think many folks, and not to say, again, not to make it equivalent, but if you think about just the cultural tastes of Americans and how many different podcasts and YouTube channels and soaps and whatever, you name it, there are, there is no single majority position in politics. We're all kind of minorities in some sense that would like better representation than Soviet style A or B type thing. So, all right, with that, I'm gonna do, I think, the agenda here, and folks can tell me, hey, no, don't talk about that. We want to hear about this. Just go up to the microphone. Tell me to change gears. I'm going to do a little bit through the presentation, just to do a few ABCs to make sure we're on the same page about ranked choice voting, and then I'm going to turn it over to Luz to talk about the things they're working on in Pioneer Valley with folks here, and I guess I would just say, so our name's Rank the Vote. So people say you work on ranked choice voting, and we're proud. We work on lots of ranked choice voting, and we think it's a really good starter issue. In America, I think there's opportunities now that didn't exist a few years ago for a variety of reasons. I think folks working on ranked choice voting have helped advance the conversation on election reform. It was, as you'll see from this presentation, I think, we love ranked choice voting. There's other ways to vote that are very good. There are a lot of ways to vote that are a lot better than the one we're doing now. We kind of chose ranked choice voting. A lot of people chose ranked choice voting. The reason why there's a movement for ranked choice voting and not a giant movement for mixed member, proportional representation, whatever, is because it involves, with ranked choice voting, it's a small change, a small step that shows how you can just change a little thing in the way we vote now and open up a world of possibilities and choice, at least at the party level. Now, that one change doesn't necessarily solve all the gerrymandering stuff, but it takes you a step forward. And the big thing is it gets people talking about, as we're about to, what's going on with the way we vote now? I never knew there was anything wrong with it. What's wrong with it? And how can we fix it? And I'll stop babbling and start presenting. So, I didn't talk about the voter choice Massachusetts. So Luz is going to talk about that. I think Josh gave a good introduction. Yeah, voter choice Massachusetts has been around for 9 years. We've been long enough to create a movement that took ranked choice voting from an issue that 3 people cared about to an issue that in Massachusetts like 50,000 or 70,000 people cared about, and thousands of people were volunteering for. We were able to raise the money to get it on the ballot in 2020. We raised enough money to lose that ballot question in 2020 by 5 points, but we didn't give up. It wasn't a no vote, it was an I don't know vote. A lot of people, we just weren't able to reach everybody in the 3 years before that. So anyways, that's why we launched Rank the Vote, because we said, hey, you know what? Going from 3 people to talking about to a mainstream conversation, we'll take that. Let's see if other people want to do that too. All right, I'm going to figure this out here. Tower. Oh, the other. Okay. Thanks. I'll make this.
Hey, Josh's AV Club for life.
All right, so just, tell me if you get bored here. So this deck is geared for people who know nothing about ranked choice voting to a little bit about ranked choice voting. There's some sections of it that will, I think, if you think you're sort of comfortable, will make you an expert. So just sort of showing some of the basic things about our current voting system. This may be too old an election for most of the people in this room. It's from the year 2000. George Bush was running with Al Gore, and this Green Party candidate, third party stuff, Ralph Nader, also ran, felt like he had something important to say, which many people agreed with him. And so that election, came down to Florida, and it was really close. So as you can see, with the votes counted, George Bush had, 2.9 million something. Al Gore had 2.9 million something, but George W. Bush had 500 votes more than Al Gore. Meanwhile, third-party do-gooder guy here got 100,000 votes, which is way more than 500 votes. So exit polls show that had Nader not run, about 27% of his supporters would have voted for Bush, which was more than I would have guessed, but it's interesting. Voters are interesting. About 45% would have voted for Gore, and about 28% just wouldn't have voted. So net, had Nader not run, according to these exit polls, Al Gore would have received a net of about 18,000 more votes than Bush and would have been the president of the United States, which, might have made a difference in that period for some people. So in this scenario, Nader is referred to as a spoiler, meaning he runs and he has no chance of winning, but he ruins it for the next most similar candidate, in this case, Al Gore. And for those who were alive then and thinking about politics, the Democrats could kind of see this train wreck coming for miles away. They were not happy about it. They were angry at each other and their friends who were thinking about, if you're eating lunch with your friend and you're a Democrat and Ralph Nader's, one of your friends there, Ralph Nader's supporter, you might give them a good talking to, a good scolding, like, why are you even thinking of voting for him? And in terms of the Democratic leading press and whatnot, like, why are you running? You're just going to ruin the election and hand it to the other guy. And unfortunately, they were right. And so I think the takeaway from this is really what we were talking about before. It's bad enough that the wrong guy won, but you can say, it was basically a coin toss anyways. But what this really does is discourages, people from investing in third-party candidacies, whether it's Ralph Nader, whether it's the Yankee Party, Yankee National Party. And that's the shame of it, is it's canceling choice. It's canceling the value, the perceived value of investing in building new political movements. All right, another example here. So it's not just general elections that our current voting system messes up. This was the primary field in 2016, and you can see here, it was a lot of Republicans running in that primary. And in New Hampshire, which was, the first primary, I think there was caucus before that, maybe in Iowa, but about 60% of the vote went to more traditional Republicans, and then, about 38% went to Trump and a couple other kind of more newer, more radical flavored Republicans. But Trump goes on to win this contest and look like Superman with just 35% of the vote. I mean, the next closest guy was John Kasich with 16%. So it started to create this aura of invulnerability. And this went on for state after state, turning someone who was considered a joke candidate for a while into a juggernaut. And it wasn't just New Hampshire, it was Super Tuesday, and on and on. It was only by the end of the primary process, with a bunch of states where most of the field had dropped out because they were getting buried, that he never even accumulated a majority of the overall Republican primary vote throughout the course of the contest. All right, so another problem, so that's a problem with crowded fields and primaries. And we see that, by the way, that wasn't a one-off. I think we've seen that recently in the Democratic field in 2020, when Biden emerged only after the whole entire rest of the field, except for Sanders and Warren, dropped out. And so it's not a new, he went from being like maybe third or fourth in polling to the only guy in the field. And was that because voters put him to number one? Not so much. It was more orchestrated by party insiders. Another problem with our current voting system is the sort of reinforcing effect it has on polarization. We already talked about this, safe congressional seats. It's not just congressional seats. There are a lot of states where there's district seats that are, how they're going to go. A lot of it's gerrymandering. It's not all gerrymandering. Some of it's just the fact when you carve districts up and one person's going to win them. Turns out that having one person represent tens of thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people for a congressional district isn't necessarily the best way to do it. You could also, the alternative, have a handful of people represent those, same tens or hundreds of thousands of folks. But anyways, this is what we got now, safe congressional seats for a dominant party. So what I'll point out here, though, is this creates something that maybe I hadn't thought about until a few years ago when a group started pointing it out, which is that when you got these safe seats, we know who's going to win. So what does that mean? What it means is the person we know what party's going to win, but who's going to win from that party is determined in that party's primary. And those tend to be really low turnout. So the primary is not a de facto general election, which is interesting, except maybe like for each party, maybe 5% of the voting population is turning out in each of the parties' primaries. And let's just say the lower the voter turnout, and probably Emmy and some of the folks who've been around politics a good bit, the lower the turnout, the more leverage that well-organized interest groups can have, whether it's the MAGA movement or, big tobacco or big oil or whatever. It's easier to do more with your money and influence when you have less voters to move to get your result. And so what this means is that a couple things. What we've seen in the Republican side, I think, is, and we saw this just this past week, the MAGA movement, once Trump won, he was able to leverage the strength of his movement and his influence in these primaries to say, if you do not go along with me, not just during elections, but after we get you elected, you're going to do what I say, or I'm going to make sure you're not elected anymore. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to primary you. New verb created in the last, 15 years or whatever. MAGA's going to primary you, and you're not going to be in office anymore, so you better do what we say. So it's not a good dynamic either for the election or for governance. I mean, we'd expect electeds, we think in democracy, our representatives represent their constituents. Or the representatives, if not the constituents, sometimes, sure, they gotta make a call based on their own judgment and their own values and morals or whatever. But, we don't want our representatives responding to money, and we don't want them responding to a narrow faction that happens to control their party's primary. So I'm going to skip this, more about polarization. Folks are familiar with this, negative partisanship, and people are voting. Now, with these two choices, most people are voting because they hate the other party as opposed to being in love with their party. I mean, there's some that really like their party, and that's good. It's good to have positive feelings about something, but unfortunately, most of the time that's not happening. Our current system hasn't been great for women. Women are doing a lot better getting elected now than they were traditionally. Part of that's due to great efforts. There's been a whole movement focused on equipping, supporting women and getting into elected office, and it turns out that they're doing much better in open seats now. They're doing much better retaining their seats. But as folks are probably familiar with, a big feature of American politics is incumbency. So the pace of change is painfully slow when the seat frees up every 45 years or whatever. And we'll talk how we can talk more about why that is, but I kind of want to move through this a little quicker. So the current voting system, restricting people's freedoms to run, look at Ralph Nader. If you guys get up the ladder and start running for bigger and bigger offices, you'll start facing these hard choices too. Restricting voters' freedom of choice in the voting booth. There's plenty of voters who might have loved Ralph Nader but didn't want to elect George Bush. I think he was probably a lot more popular than that 1% of the vote he got. The elections are vulnerable to these spoiler outcomes, undermining the wishes of the majority of people, distracting from healthy issue-based campaigns, and feeding division. So as far as in our current system, there's no incentive to be particularly respectful to your opponent, unless you've got a really confident, strong platform to go on. You gain it's much easier to beat your opponent into the ground and sling mud at them. And I think that's part of why everybody hates the other guy more than they like their own guy at this point. So ranked choice voting fixes this. You guys know what ranked choice voting is. Instead of picking just one candidate, you get to rank multiple candidates in the order you prefer them. This is what our traditional ballot looks like. One simple change to this ballot. Ta-da! You go from picking one to ranking, and now you're doing ranked choice voting. The opponents, the biggest argument against ranked choice voting is it's hard. Voters don't understand this. You're going to confuse people. Let's do a quick exercise. We got some desserts up here. Can folks pretend they're voting for their favorite dessert and see if they have any? See if you can figure out what you would do with this ballot. All right, did anybody find that difficult? No. There's instructions at the bottom. Oh man, I should have taken those away. I cheated. It's not supposed to read instructions though. All right, so that's the easy part. But people say, well, okay, maybe it's easy to fill out, but accounting is a total mystery. How do you count these things? So I think we're going to take you guys from this familiar with ranked choice voting to oh yeah, I know this stuff. In 5 minutes, you're going to be experts in counting ranked choice voting ballots from this presentation. So the first secret to counting ranked choice voting ballots is you only look at the first choice votes initially. So you have all these ballots in front of you. You're going to count them to see who wins. But they've all got these rankings on them. You're going to just look at the first choice initially. You're going to put them in piles based on who got the first choice. So in this example, these different candidates got that percentage of the first choice votes. And you see the dark orange one had 55%. Our goal, when you're using ranked choice voting, just to elect a single seat, like in our current districts, the goal is to get the candidate with the majority of support. So in this case, 55%, that's a majority, so dark orange wins. Majority in the first round. We never even stopped to go and look what people's second and third choice was. Here's where the ranked choice voting kicks in. Same thing, we're only going to look at the first choices. We do that, and the one with the most has 40%. Is 40% a majority? Nope. So what are we gonna do? What we're gonna do, our goal is to get to a majority, and the way we're gonna get to the majority is we're gonna eliminate the candidate with the least support. So in this case, the candidate with the least support is light orange. We knock them out, but for those that voted for light orange, let's say they were like Ralph Nader's cousin or something like that, so 5% of people voted for them, we're not gonna throw their votes away. We say, okay, sorry your favorite didn't win, we're gonna count your ballot for your second choice now. So now for those ballots of that eliminated candidate, we start looking at those voters' second choice. And we just put them in the other piles, and you can see here in this scenario, the dark orange picked up 4%, the dark purple picked up 1%. And that brought our overall totals to 44, 36, and 20. Anyone with a majority now? No. Guess what we're going to do?
Take the lowest one.
Exactly. Rinse, lather, repeat. get rid of the lowest one. Turns out in this case, there was a real affinity, it looks like, between the light purple voters and the dark purple voters. It'd be like, I don't know, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, sure, yeah, good example, yeah, two progressives or whatever, yeah, 100%. And so 19% of those 20 go to the dark purple, 1% goes to the dark orange, and that brings the total now to 45-55. Do we have a majority now? Yep, we do, and so we have a winner. Any questions about that? That's it, that's all there is.
So when I was fighting with people on ranked choice voting on Reddit, major complaint, is like, oh, well, that means though some people get 2 votes. What do we do to really combat that? Because although we know that's not true, just the fact of the matter that their candidate didn't get eliminated and their vote didn't get redistributed, their vote was only counted once. Whereas other people, in some ways, their vote was counted twice. We have an effective foil to that to shut people up on Reddit, which is the sole purpose of my life.
All right, yeah, that's good. Wherever you can get meaning, look for it and find it. Yeah, so the way, I would say the good answer for that is, every ballot is counted once in every round. Another word for ranked choice voting is instant runoff voting. So it's like you see these, you got round 1, you got round 2, round 3. How many of the ballots are counted in round 1? All of them. How many in round 2? All of them. How many in round 3? All of them. The caveat there is, if someone stopped ranking candidates and they ranked all the candidates they like, and then the rest of them they didn't like, and they stopped ranking, well, if none of the candidates they voted for are around, their ballot's not going to be counted in the rounds where the candidate's gone. But other than that, everybody's got the same opportunity. I mean, who would you rather be? The person whose ballot went to their 4th choice and was still being counted, or the person whose first choice was still in the race? All right, so that's it. I mean, I think that's, so Maine was the first state to use ranked choice voting statewide. This was the first congressional election to go to ranked choice voting counting. It was between Jared Golden and Bruce Poliquin. Poliquin was an incumbent Republican. There were also 2 independents running, Tiffany Bond and this other guy whose first name I can't remember. Anyways, so it was real close, kind of like, Gore and Bush, and then you had instead of Nader, you had Bond and Hoare, and so Bond and Hoare didn't have any chance, so they were eliminated, and just a different way of counting it. They call it batch elimination. You can either eliminate them one by one, or you can say, okay, mathematically, none of these dudes have any chance at all, so let's just reduce the number of rounds and get rid of all the folks, with a chance, let them go home early and redistribute their votes. So same thing, and it resulted in a narrow victory for Jared Golden. So that's a real world example right there. This is ranked choice voting. This is an example from Australia. So Australia has used ranked choice voting for 100 years. So that's one of the nice things about ranked choice voting when you go to advocate for it. Not only is it used in 40 jurisdictions in the US, not only has Cambridge been using it for 80 years, but Ireland and Australia have been using it for 100 years. So, people say, well, that's not going to work. That could never work. They've been, not only been using it for 100 years, both countries have been hand counting their federal elections for 100 years. So, anyways, this is an example from Australia from just a couple of years ago, 2022. There's a bunch of parties. They have a multi-party system in Australia. One of the parties is called the Liberal Party. It's actually their conservative party. But anyways, and a bunch of the women in that party weren't super thrilled with sort of the pace of evolution amongst some of their male colleagues who were continuing to be not as congenial or whatever, collegial as they should be. And they were also not happy with their party's environmental policies at all. So they said, screw this, we have ranked choice voting, we don't have to run this party. So they created this whole movement called the Teal Independents, I think it was supposed to be like a combination of blue and green is teal, like blues. It's the opposite of here, the Conservative Party had blue. Anyways, so they ran and they won a bunch of seats and had a lot of impact. So they didn't have to like, unlike, you know, Jeff Flake, who has to retire, and, you know, all these Tom Tillis retire, like your party, you don't like your party anymore, you gotta retire. Nope, you can start the Yankee National Party or the Teal Independence. But they could just, this was easier for them. I'm not gonna say it was easy, but easier because they had ranked choice voting. So ranked choice, there's been ranked choice voting used in the US a long time ago, and then sort of reemergence in early 2000s. It's been used now in California for about 20 years, and across the country. And what we're seeing in the places that are using ranked choice voting is, compared with cities that are not using ranked choice voting, is that more women are getting elected. It's helping reduce those barriers that they're facing to getting elected, probably putting a little more heat on the incumbents. In some cases, in the municipal elections like these, by removing runoffs, removing preliminary elections and runoffs, it's decreasing the costs to run. And on top of that, the other thing is it also allows voters to not worry about electability as much when they are casting their vote. So they can take a chance. They have to be like, oh, no one ever votes for the woman, she'll never win, I'm not gonna waste my vote. They could be like, boom. And, you know, over time, by now I think the culture's changed a lot, that, you know, people look at women candidates and it's, you know, less of a question of electability than it used to be, for sure. In New York, when they had their first ranked choice voting primary election, New York's a Democratic city, so back to what we're talking about.
Sorry, just one quick question. In Ireland and Australia, is there any criticism of ranked choice voting? Is there any movement to move away from it? Or are they just happy with it and that's that?
They're pretty happy with it. I mean, it was looked at officially by commissions, I think in both countries. I know for sure Ireland, they've declined to change it. There's no meaningful movement to change it. For them, it's just how you vote. Australia has a number of different features. Both countries have some pretty different features from what we have. Ireland's is mostly proportional ranked choice voting. Australia's is a mix. Australia also has, I don't know what you want to call it, compulsory voting, civic duty voting, whatever. It's a day off for everybody. They have they grill democracy sausages outside of the polls and whatnot. So it's kind of a different ballgame. They also have a few interesting things when you have ranked choice voting in Australia. I don't know, maybe you guys are looking in Connecticut and New York at how your party can leverage fusion voting. There's sort of a fusion-esque aspect to ranked choice voting when you have it in a multi-party system. So the parties actually have this whole thing where they kind of kibitz amongst each other to see who's going to sort of support the other party for second and third rankings. And then they give to voters these things called these how to vote cards. So like your party supporters, your party will have a suggestion for you, which you don't need to follow, but which does for a lot of voters. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever they say, I'll do. So all this to say, it's I forgot what was your question, sir? I apologize.
My question?
Yeah.
Just whether there was any dissatisfaction with those systems, and if so, what sort of criticisms did they have? I think you've already answered.
Yeah, it's pretty much, it'd be on the margins at this point. Like, I'm not aware of any meaningful. And in fact, there's, at this point, just to put this in context internationally, like I said, there's a lot of better voting systems than the one we use. In terms of the one we use, it's us, Britain, of the major democracies, us, Britain, Canada, and India, I think. Japan actually has they have parallel voting systems. They have it paired with this. So yeah, I mean, there's some that aren't all the way better, but yeah. So in terms of exclusively first past the post, we're the kind of the last group of folks, and you can see some similar problems in some of those other countries as well. Although certainly in Canada and Britain, not quite as bad of overall result as the U.S. perhaps. So anyways, first election in New York City using RCV and the primaries, the partisan primaries. Whoever wins the Democratic primary in these New York City elections is winning for the most part. And they used RCV in the primary. So they went from 27% women to 61% women. Now part of this was RCV. Part of it was term limits they did introduce, part of it was campaign finance reform, and a big part of it was an organization that was geared, that was recruiting and supporting women candidates. But RCV was definitely recognized as part of the things that helped them, helped people who were advocates interested in more equal gender representation, almost tip it the other way there, going from 27 to 61%. So big success there. Folks will talk about how ranked choice voting improves decreases negative campaigning. This is because if you're running a ranked choice voting election, like some of us in this room have, you have an incentive to appeal to your opponent's supporters because you want their second and third choice votes. They're not just targets anymore. You have an incentive to demonstrate that you have some common ground with them. You're better, but you're not totally different. You support a lot of the same things. So the fun example we do, this example has been repeated in city after city where ranked choice voting has been introduced. Before ranked choice voting, we just, if I saw the opponent signing the yard, I just walk on by, But if under ranked choice voting, I'd still go up and I knock that door and I say, I see you're supporting so-and-so. I just wanted to let you know that I'm also running and that we agree on these three things, and I'd like to ask you if you consider giving me your second or third choice or whatnot. So that kind of thing. So that kind of incentive affects the campaign environment. There have been studies that have surveyed voter sentiment in a variety of ways, perceptions of negativity, and that sort of thing, that have upheld that this does seem to have an effect. And that's what this slide's about. Won't bore you. So I don't want to get you over to Luz here. So primary problem we talked about, where elections are decided in primaries. Ranked choice voting can help in a few different ways than that. Other reforms can help as well. I mean, just the main thing right now is a lot of the effects of gerrymandering. Some of the power of that is predicated on the fact that you've only got A and B running, right? So you can put whoever you want on your primary, or if you're in a blue district, or you can put whoever you want on your Democratic primary. People aren't going to vote for the Republican in that district, or vice versa. With ranked choice voting, more candidates can run. You're going to get some shades of gray in there, and there's going to be more competition, even if it's between two candidates that are left or two candidates that are right. So even with single member districts, ranked choice voting can decrease the impact of gerrymandering. It wasn't gerrymandering so much, but an example of this, you think about there was Alaska adopted ranked choice voting a few years ago. There was a Senate election there, Lisa Murkowski. So they also created an open primary system, but the point being here, Lisa Murkowski, who had won as a write-in candidate in previous elections in the general, after not making out of her party's primary, she's able to run as a Republican, make it to the general. In the general election, she's the majority winner. She was the plurality winner in the first round, and the majority winner overall, running against a MAGA candidate and a Democratic Party candidate. And the point is, under a traditional system, where the voters wouldn't get a choice of two Republicans, you're getting Kelly Shabaka, the MAGA candidate. Like, that's just because they're not going to vote. It's very unlikely they're going to vote for a Democratic candidate, although they did elect Mary Pompeo. But with ranked choice voting, voters are able to see Lisa Murkowski in the general election actually on the ballot and vote for her. So, all right, I think I'm going to turn it. Any questions about the presentation? So ranked choice voting is used in about 40 places in the U.S. After Luz talks, I can fill in any gaps as far as what we're doing to make it happen. Rank the vote in our state partners in Massachusetts and Connecticut and California, you name it. Any questions about this so far before I turn it over to Luz?
No, it's great.
One question here. My pleasure.
Just kind of in general, I've seen along with the interest in ranked choice voting due to the recent events in the past month or so, I've also seen people speak a lot more about growing this house in the House.
Yep.
Do you think both of those are feasible initiatives that could be here?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The conversation's opened up. I don't know, raise your hand if you ever listened to Ezra Klein. All right, cool. So he had a guy on his podcast. He's with the New York Times. He's got a pretty big podcast, pretty big following amongst folks that pay attention to politics. He had Lee Drutman, who's an advocate for proportional representation, on there, and they were talking about. I will get to the expanded House thing. So they were talking about proportional representation for congressional seats. So you can do proportional representation like Australia does, or Ireland and Australia do with ranked choice voting. You can also do it like a lot of Europe does with, you vote for a party basically, or when you vote for the candidate, you're basically voting for the party, and they pull candidates from that party's list until the percentages match with the number of voters who voted for the party. Both of those require, something like multi-member districts. So instead of having, I represent this district, it's like, we're gonna have 3 or 5 people represent this district, and then we can use a system like that. Now, where folks are talking about expanding the House especially is to change the federal elections like that would require an act of Congress. Not constitutional change, but an act of Congress. And the question that arises is, why would they do that? A lot of Congress people are going to put themselves out of a job. So there is an opportunity to expand the size of the House so that, with a couple benefits. One is you could make a transition like this without massive disruption of the current incumbents all at once structurally, whatever. So it's a little more palatable for them. The other thing is, it turns out that our Congress is stupidly small relative to our population. And it's a great podcast. It was just out last week. If you have a chance to pick it up, I think if you're not subscribed or whatever, you can't get in at some point. But definitely worth a listen. But long and the short of it is, it wasn't like the founders intended for our House to stop growing. It's just in like 1920 or something, they stopped expanding the House, and so now like congressional district, I don't know what is it, 400,000, 500,000. They're big, so it's like, what's that?
It varies by state, so quite a lot.
Really? Oh yeah, because of the extra two members, yeah. Anyways, so does that answer your question though? You could expand the House without doing proportional representation. It would have some benefits. It would decrease the number of people, increase the ratio of representatives to constituents. But, I would say it'd be a missed opportunity if you didn't do them together. All right, thanks for listening to me. Sorry, I hope I didn't go over too long, and I'm gonna hand it over to Luz here.
Hi everyone, and I'm going to put on a timer to make sure that I don't go past too much. So as Nathan introduced me, my name is Luz Rappaport. I'm a grad student here at UMass, but I'm also a regional organizer for Voter Choice Massachusetts. My region is the Pioneer Valley. So Amherst is in the Pioneer Valley. Is there anyone from the Valley here?
I went to Smith.
Yeah, you know what? I went to Mahood.
Yeah.
We're right there. But the Pioneer Valley, just for a little bit of reference, it generally encompasses 3 counties. Oh, Jesus, I did not mean to do that. Okay, that's my bad. There we go, okay. So the Pioneer Valley, depends on who you ask, is generally 3 counties, including Hampton, Hampshire, which is where we are right now, and Franklin. And it encompasses anywhere from like the border to Vermont to down to Connecticut. There's like 2 or 3 towns that are a buffer, but it's all along the Connecticut River. Across the Pioneer Valley, there's 43 municipalities, 69 if you count Franklin, and the important part there is that out of the 2 cities that currently have like very solidly implemented ranked choice voting, one of them is in the Pioneer Valley. That's East Hampton. It has a voter population of around 12,000 people. So very small, yet very successful in their implementation. And so throughout the state of Massachusetts, we currently have movements in around 20 cities, and around 10 cities having presented some sort of home rule petition or some sort of movement to the legislature to request to implement ranked choice voting. However, they are currently being stalled by the legislature, unfortunately. And that is part of the work that we're doing, and the other half, right, is Okay. And the other half to that is doing organizing, right? So trying to get people mobilized, trying to get people to show up. So to that, we are organizing to expand our organization, as well as hopefully hosting some movie screenings, some like community events. As Nathan mentioned, unfortunately, the current political climate, not only is it polarized, but it's also very isolated. People feel as though like I live in my own little bubble. And a big thing about ranked choice voting, as you noticed, it's very easy to explain, but a lot of people don't have that explanation yet, right? So a lot of the message of Voter Choice May is trying to expand that message. I will say that lack of information can also harm when ranked choice voting is implemented. So the first example that Nathan gave of like that one candidate that got to 55 in the first round, so ranked choice voting didn't really need to be used. In East Hampton, which is where ranked choice voting is implemented, they had a race in 2025 for town council. They were using ranked choice voting, and one of the candidates asked their voters to not rank anyone else. So that's like one of those issues where like the problem is that now everyone that voted for that candidate now has a spoiler ballot. Like now their votes cannot be counted in the second round because they don't have a second choice. That does mean that the person that won the seat won by 38%, which is not the majority, but there were no other votes to count, right? And so a big part of this is to make sure that all candidates and all town residents can collaborate in like, no, but we want to use ranked choice voting. This isn't just like a thing that we did for fun. This is a way to express our voice. I'm actually a 10, so I'm gonna respect that. But yeah, so this is a great representation of like where we're working. My focus currently is Amherst, which is the town that we're in right now, in Northampton, which is about 20 minutes from here. It's where Smith College is. Yeah, so I would love, so I'm a fresh organizer myself. So if there are any people from different organizations that would love to collaborate, or anyone that would be willing and are able to chat, I'm more than open. I do have some freshly printed business cards that I would love to hand out. And yeah, thank you so much.